St. Catharines Council voting 6-5 the other day to install the nativity scene on the lawn of City Hall, and it has extended the same courtesy to other religious groups on the recommendation of city staff. Now, the city, St. Catharines, has displayed the nativity scene since 1965, but it was kept packed away over the past couple of years. And city staff recommending that we should be respectful to all faiths, so maybe pack it up. Well, it's coming back. Saleh Waziruddin is the chair of St. Catharines Anti-Racism Advisory Committee and joins us now on Good Morning Hamilton. Saleh, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Rick. I'm doing okay. As you said, I'm Saleh Waziruddin, chair of the City of St. Catharines Anti-Racism Advisory Committee. And I know we were all supposed to turn our clocks back an hour, but it looks like some of us overshot that by a few years. Because we've been going backwards, it looks like, in St. Catharines, while some of us are trying to get the city just to catch up to the rest of the world. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say, it's fair to say you don't want the nativity scene on display once again.
That's right. The Anti-Racism Advisory Committee, we didn't know that this motion was going to come up, but just to be preemptive in case it did, we talked about it extensively and had a resolution saying it's not being inclusive. And actually, there's a committee between us and the City Council called the Social Sustainability Committee, and that met and took a vote on it. It was a 4-2 vote agreeing to recommend City Council not bring this nativity scene back. And it's not a war on Christmas, but it's against not the city not being inclusive of all of us.
So the city has said that they're extending the same courtesy to other religious groups. Is that an empty comment on their part?
Exactly. You can't make it inclusive by inviting other faiths. People who think that are only fooling themselves, and the rest of us aren't buying it. You might get 3 or 4 other faiths to piggyback off Christianity. And I say piggybacking because many faiths don't have a tradition of having a display or diorama, so they're just going to have to come up with something. But there's many other faith communities that are just so small, they don't have time or resources to make a display. And how are you going to do one representing agnostics or atheists? But even worse, there's the idea being pushed that a nativity scene is inclusive, but it's exclusively Christian. It has to do with it's with part of a belief that it's exclusively Christian. So there's no way it's inclusive by itself, and there's no way you can make it inclusive by inviting others. That sounds good on paper, but in reality, you're not going to represent all the faiths or people who choose not to follow a faith.
The question is, in this story, is should the city, whatever the city is, be responsible for displaying religious installments?
You're absolutely right, and that came up in the Social Sustainability Committee meeting. And just to give a real illustration, one St. Catharines resident has already told me they're putting in a request for a satanic display. So with all respect to our Satanist residents in St. Catharines, how is the city going to decide which faiths to accept or not? City government or any government should have no business with faiths and religions this way. These displays don't belong on city properties in the first place. And as has been pointed out, there's so many churches, especially around City Hall, that are going to have these displays. There's no reason for it to be on City Hall, city properties.
The counter argument is, listen, this nativity scene has been on display since, I mentioned, 1965. It's not hurting anybody because, hey, it's baby Jesus, it's the nativity. We've had this forever. Your response to that?
Well, there's people pushing an agenda that Canada is a Christian country, just like there's other people pushing an agenda that we're a white country, and both of those ideas come from colonialism. Just because one religion or one race is the majority, and that's a result of colonialism, doesn't mean it belongs only to one faith or one race, or that it's more Canadian than the rest of us. After Indigenous people, we all belong equally here. So some people might think, it's the majority and it's not hurting anybody. But actually, people who follow other faith traditions get the message from looking at that we belong less, that the city government is promoting or establishing the majority faith community. And there's no way that they can promote that with including everybody else, so it shouldn't be done.
I can understand why many feel that way. Saleh, we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time, but I appreciate your time today.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify, again, this is not a war on Christmas, but it's about being inclusive to everybody. Thanks for having me on. As you said, I'm Saleh Waziruddin, Chair of the City of St. Catharines Anti-Racism Advisory Committee.
Excellent. Thanks, Saleh.
You're listening to the Good Morning Hamilton podcast from 900 CHML.
It's not a war on Christmas, but it's against not the city not being inclusive of all of us.
Welcome back to Good Morning Hamilton on 900 CHML. Saleh Waziruddin, Chair of the St. Catharines Anti-Racism Advisory Committee, on with us just moments ago, talking about this nativity scene coming back to the city of St. Catharines City Hall after a 2-year absence. Councillors voting 6-5 to bring it back, install it on the lawn of City Hall. It's also extended the same courtesy to other religious groups, but some people are saying, including Saleh, that the city's kind of missing the point in this whole thing. Karrie Porter is a councillor with the city of St. Catharines and joins us now on Good Morning Hamilton. Karrie, good morning. Welcome to GMH. How are you today?
I'm really good. How are you today?
Not too bad. How did you vote on this issue?
I think this is the most ridiculous issue. It was my last council meeting because I'm not running again, and I'm very disappointed that such a silly issue came before us. I don't think it belongs in City Hall, and we have 3 churches within a stone's throw of our City Hall, and it would have been much more appropriate to gift that nativity set to one of those churches.
I think about this issue and I think, should a city be responsible, any city really, be responsible for installing a religious display? I mean, that's what churches and synagogues and temples and the like are for, right?
Yes, and from my vantage point, this was a coordinated political move. We had 3 people running for mayor. 2 of them were very religious, and one mayoral candidate in St. Catharines actually had a big cross on his car and wanted to bring Jesus back to City Hall. He literally campaigned on that, and we started receiving emails and messages during the election campaign about this. And one of the issues that I brought up is I didn't hear from most of these people for 4 years on any issue. And I asked the question during the council meeting, what would Jesus do on this issue? Would he really care about this? Or would this be the issue that he would want a Christian to email their government about? Or would he rather people email about the fact that Ontario Works rates are $733, ODSP rates and Ontario Works rates really need to increase, and we have a housing crisis. And so this also came with an addition to an amendment to the motion to add a staff person to this job, which I think is also outrageous. When our city staff are scrambling, we have an under-resourced City Hall, and I believe that money would be more appropriate and probably more inclusive if we, for example, invested in a planning position for affordable housing.
Yeah, as you mentioned...
That's what Jesus would do, in my opinion.
Yeah, as you mentioned during the meeting the other day, and again, we're talking with Karrie Porter, Councillor, City of St. Catharines. I think the quote was, Jesus wouldn't care about this issue. There are bigger fish to fry.
Exactly. There are so many bigger fish to fry. There are so many more simple solutions to this, and this isn't really an issue, and it's really not a problem. So I'm a part-time city councillor. I have a full-time job, and I work in housing and homelessness. And so I worked at not-for-profits. Before this job, I worked at the charity, the not-for-profit that actually ran the Out of the Cold shelter. So there was a lot of talk about charity, and this is why we put the nativity scene on City Hall, and we need to thank our churches for all the charity. And I certainly am very appreciative of volunteers and the charitable work and all the things that churches do in this community. But charity also needs justice. So I was having a real struggle with this as well, because I really do want religious people and people who believe in the Jesus that I know and understand, to fight for justice and an end to suffering for people. It's not just about charity. So that was part of the discussion as well. And my other comment is that this is the whitest nativity scene I've ever seen. I made a joke that the baby Jesus looks like my council colleague when he was a baby. So honestly, our nativity scene isn't good representation. Joseph and Mary and Jesus were from the Levant, and they should have brown skin and curly hair. So I if this comes back on City Hall, I hope something's done about that as well.
Karrie, appreciate your thoughts on this topic, and best of luck going forward.
Thanks so much.
That's Karrie Porter, Councillor, City of St. Catharines. I'm sure Jesus would be much, or whatever higher power you believe in, would be much more in tune with what's happening in terms of helping each other out, loving one another, being inclusive, sharing and really exploring each other's diversity and championing that. A nativity scene, I'm sure he could care less about. Oh my gosh, they're taking down the nativity scene. They'll forget about me. No, baby Jesus, we will not forget.